Today on Let's Take a Walk, Charlie is joined by John Rossman, former Amazon executive, advisor, and author of Big Bet Leadership. In a world where everything is labeled a transformation, John helps us draw a critical distinction, what it really means to place a big bet, and why leading those bets requires a very different set of skills than running day-to-day operations. Here's Charlie.
Hey, John. Today I'm excited to have you. We've done a little bit of conversation, but I've read your book, Big Bet Leadership, and I'm pretty excited to share that with our community since, we're all ground up in the day-to-day, just one thing after another, constantly, so many demands happening, but, kind of small things, big things. And I'm really intrigued and excited about the way you kind of framed up this AI era in terms of your book, Big Bet Leadership. And if you could just kind of introduce the idea and yourself a little bit and your background, and then we'll just kind of roll along here with the group and see where it goes.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Charlie. Thank you for the time to get to know you and the important work that you do and for the opportunity to talk to your audience. So John Rossman. I was an early Amazon executive. I helped launch the marketplace business in 2002. I left Amazon in 2006. I was a partner at a firm called Alvarez & Marcel for 12 years. Along the way, I started to see the impact of all the little techniques and principles from Amazon. My biggest client was the Gates Foundation, actually. And a client of mine came to me one day and goes, John, you do a really nice job of delicately taking the insights from Amazon and applying them into our work. And so I talked him into being my partner on my first book called The Amazon Way, then wrote a book called Think Like Amazon. I left A&M in 2017 as my kind of keynote speaking business and advisory business took off. I got to be the senior innovation advisor at T-Mobile for 3 years. My client, Kevin McCaffrey, ran strategy at T-Mobile and had the remit of creating a new business incubation to explore ideas outside the core. We took all this stuff from Amazon and from kind of first principles up, built a new approach for T-Mobile, a company that distinctly did not want to be Amazon, but knew they needed some new ways to approach some things. And out of that work, I talked Kevin into being my co-author on this next book, which made it so much better. And the book is called Big Bet Leadership, Your Transformation Playbook for Winning in the Hyper-Digital Era. And the essential thesis of the book is that we know that the vast majority of transformations, AI, digital transformations, growth strategies, merger acquisitions, major platform replatforming, the vast majority of those have a dramatic, failure rate relative to them. One study showed that out of 2,500 large IT projects, only 8% were on time and on budget. But more importantly, only 0.5% were on time, on budget, and delivered expected impact. And so the thesis of the book is that the leadership skills to be a really great operational leader are dramatically different than the leadership skills to drive a major transformation. And we believe that there's, after getting to work for and study a few of the legends who have become systematic in how they drive reinvention and transformation. So Jeff Bezos, John Legere from T-Mobile, Satya Nadella from Microsoft, is that there's 3 essential habits that these systematic transformers have that are different than really good operators. And those 3 habits are they create clarity, they maintain velocity, and they accelerate risk and value. And so the whole book is a playbook to put those habits into place, many of them built on the essential philosophies of Amazon, but simplified and clarified for somebody who doesn't have all that background from Amazon to take advantage of. So that's Big Bet Leadership in a nutshell. That's my background in a nutshell. And what I like to do is help companies solve really hard problems, and these are some of the essential tools that I use to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think, intellectually, people that we work with and companies that we work with that are part of the community kind of get that we're at a very different spot right now. The word transformation is thrown all over the place. Everything's a transformation, but we're in a true transformation. It's pretty deep. It's being driven by the technology, which has always been true, but it's massive in terms of the business model's going to need to be transformed, the processes, the workforce, the economics. People are going to have to think differently about it, and it's a pretty risky time. And a lot of the IT professionals, because we're the ones that get called at 2 a.m. when something breaks, are pretty risk averse,
Right.
right? And the more we stand still and don't jump out, the more other people jump out and cause chaos with, big ideas coming in from the left and the right and every place else. So, how do you begin to have a kind of a two-sided thought around this? Is one is the engineering that's got to go on to run something like Amazon, 7 by 24. I mean, it's always there. It's not like it's not built well, right? At the same time, be able to take big bets and get into different businesses and, not try to hold back. It's kind of a dichotomy world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to take some time and build off of some incredible insights that you gave in that. So first is relative to transformation. So a big bet is essentially any strategy, digital strategy, AI strategy, major replatforming, acquisition. It's anything that has both high ambition and comes loaded with risks and unknown unknowns and dependencies that make them especially perilous. And as you said, everything's called a transformation, but everything is not a transformation. So we use this framing of big bet to mean truly something that has high ambition, but high risk relative to it. The forward of the book is so the subtitle is Your Transformation Playbook for Winning in the Hyperdigital Era. So we give a case up front for, well, what is this hyperdigital era? And it essentially frames that if Netscape went public in 1995, I think it was, and essentially that's used as kind of the starting gun for kind of this past 30 years of digital transformation. And the framing is, if you think the past 30 years have been exciting or disruptive, it's going to be nothing like the next era. Like, we are just getting into this era of, like, there's going to be a whole new set, and it's coming faster than before, of new winners and new losers. So, to your second point, companies need to develop both a playbook for maintaining operational excellence in the pursuit of that, and to become a systematic transformer. And it's that second part of the muscle set of the playbook that most companies are not well versed in. There's just a few that I think have really become systematic transformers. And that's why I continue to think that Amazon is the most interesting company of this digital era, because they are not just a world-class operating company, and they aren't just a world-class transformation company. They do it across a set of horizontal industries and geographies and capabilities that is a combination unlike anybody else operates. And your point is, it does take two essential mindsets and management systems. One is an operational excellence and pursuit within that vector, and the other is the ability to pursue high ambition, high risk scenarios. Those are big bets. It requires a different playbook, and that is why we wrote this playbook, is for that executive leadership team. And the thing I would build on is, there's been a lot of important work done at kind of the middle layer management of, agility and how to explore things continuously. But there hasn't been much written for the executive leader of like, what do I need to do differently when I am exploring a high potential situation versus being a great operational leader? Leadership is a skill, and it's a skill to guide and influence others in the pursuit of a specific mission, aka different missions have different leadership skills. What we try to do, one of the essential mistakes we try to do is we try to take the mission of operational leadership and operational management and apply the same techniques, the same mindsets into what is essentially an exploration mission. And that's the first fallacy that we have to overcome, is that not only are those the wrong techniques, but they will actually do damage when it comes to exploring new concepts. That's the whole setup. That's the whole purpose of the book. We think we do a good job. No topic is ever fully explored, and everything, right? So if nothing else, we hope to really spur the conversation that companies need to take more calculated risks. It takes a different understanding of how to make high stakes decisions in exploring those types of risks. It takes a different executive mindset and a different function. We propose our approach to doing that, but I'm sure that there are others. But it's an important, vital conversation for companies to really understand, like, how are we building the capabilities of tomorrow and delivering what we need to deliver today? And to your final point, that is what makes the CIO job and the CIO function and the IT function both so difficult and so thrilling and such an opportunity, which is you have to be both the maintainer of the status quo and high reliability, high quality, high auditability, high measurability, and you have to be the team that says yes. You have to be the team that says, yes, we can explore something quickly. Yes, we can try something out. You have to figure out both of those things to truly be a steward for your organization. You can't be just the team that says, everything takes an 18-month, major platform to even start the testing of something. If that is the answer, you're failing the call that this requires.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've been in the CIO business since it was the DP manager. So I've been doing this for 60 years, and, the job has changed, right? To where we did finance and overhead systems and payroll, to where we started doing manufacturing, distribution, purchasing, sales, to where we started then integrating all of that for the cross-functional and broke down the projects to capabilities. And that's kind of what we teach and where we go with that. But, I've been on this for maybe 15 years now, is as the technology has gone from being back office to now pervasive, right? It's everywhere. That the role has got to change, in that we can't be everything to everybody, but the thing we have to be is the chief integration officer. We've got to create the platforms and for people to plug in their innovation, plug in and unplug, keep trying things. And that gets you to, we've got to embrace the idea that other people are going to be doing development than just the IT group. But the IT group has got to create the electricity and the plumbing and the pipes and the things that are
and the standards.
Yeah, and which makes us able to say yes, because the architecture has been built for change, right? And the only thing you can build to last is something that's built for change.
Yep.
Right. So,
it's built for unknown future scenarios, right?
Yeah.
So the second book I wrote, called Think Like Amazon, 50 and a half ideas to be a digital leader. So kind of the Amazon way and Think Like Amazon are brother sister books together. The first is kind of my story at Amazon, and the second is like, here's everything that I learned at Amazon. So one of the ideas from that book echoes what you're saying, and it's called "The Architecture is the Strategy," right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've all heard of service-oriented architectures. I think, and Amazon has mirrored this service-oriented organization, right? They call it a two-pizza team, but it's a two-pizza team that owns a capability, which includes not just the technology capability of the data management, but the actual processing capability. And they allow others in the organization to use this capability. For example, there is a two pizza inventory receive team at Amazon. Receiving inventory at all 300 fulfillment centers at Amazon is a massive function and has to be world-class in nature. The inventory receive to pizza team builds the essential engineered capability that is then deployed at every fulfillment center across Amazon. I think that Lego-like infrastructure allows Amazon to move faster, to enter a new market, to make a change, to have more direct accountability and grow leadership much better than kind of other functional type operating models that separate out kind of the operational capability from the technology capability. And so, as you said, we have to figure out the right balance, and everything is buried within the context of a business, right? And so we have to find the balance between kind of that control versus enablement that we need to with the business. And, there's no one right answer, but the wrong answer is not thinking it through and just becoming the organization of no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing that's kind of a struggle is this one foot on the brake, one foot on the accelerator. People know, but that they're, and you wrote an article called "The Long Term is Everything" or something. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit, because if you can't live in the long term, then this is going to come very quick. This is not a 30-year run.
Right.
We're going to see more Sears-looking things happen in the next 5 to 6 years, right? If you can't adapt to a different dynamic world that we live in, by leveraging the technology. But there's this short-term, long-term, quarter-to-quarter, invest over here, but cut the IT budget, offshore, outsource, do this, do that. And we've got to break through that because, like you said, we've got to be able to do both, right? Innovate and run the day to day, but we've got to be able to do both, live in the short term long enough to fight for the longer term. But you got to have, the way we think about it is the short term needs to be step function toward the long term, which means you got to have a long term, right?
Right.
And you may have to vector a little bit back and forth. But, that's kind of a set of questions that's also a dichotomy, short and long term. And, the question that I struggle with is, can companies live in a public market and not take it private in order to transform? Right? Because more and more companies are going private, and the equity guy, private equity guys are all over the place in every company.
Right. All right. There's a lot packed into everything you just said there. So let me tackle a few things. So I write a Substack newsletter called the Digital Leader Newsletter. A lot of the things I explore are about this challenge of, I frame it as high stakes decision making and kind of the value of stewardship. Like, are we creating a business that is going to present as much opportunity for the next generation as the business that we were handed, right? Like, we were all handed these opportunities. We didn't build all these organizations and everything, right? We were handed. Part of our job as a leader is to create a business that has as much opportunity for the next generation as what we were handed. I think that's an essential part of business leadership. And instead of, suffering the biases of short-termism and incrementalism, and as Warren Buffett frames, the ABCs of corporate decay, arrogance, bureaucracy, complacency, that we somehow earned this, I think we need to much more focus on the capability of having high standards, not being complacent, investing more in the future, and being actual stewards of our business and of our core function. Because part of our job is to create businesses that are as vital and present as much opportunity for the next generation of both our business in America as we were given here ourselves. That creates a very different investment mindset, right? And one of the things I know that you and I aligned deeply on was this concept of how vital storytelling is, right?
Mhm.
That is an opportunity for most leaders, is to be a better storyteller. If you think about, well, I think about all of Jeff Bezos' incredible capabilities. I think his strategic communication skill is like legendary and not recognized in nature, right? And I can give so many examples. The original 1997 shareholder letter, which said, this is what Amazon believes in. We believe in the long term. We believe in disrupting ourselves. We believe in the pursuit of low friction customer markets. Please don't invest in us if you don't believe in these things, right? Well, guess what? That 1997 shareholder letter is still attached to every shareholder of Amazon. And I think that is the essential challenge that Andy Jassy is trying to get back to, is this higher accountability, more nimble, more caring organization that was there when I was at Amazon. The ability to tell this story, not just internally, but to shareholders and stakeholders, is a vital part of this transition. And so strategic communication about the path that we are going to take on this and bringing everybody along is a vital part of managing this transformation. We give specific guidance and recommendations in Big Bet Leadership relative to how to be the chief repeating officer, right? The chief repeating officer, their job is to tell a meaningful story, not an empty calorie story, but a meaningful story about our customers and the problems we are going to solve for our customers and what we believe the future is, including the financial case for it, but being careful about only committing to those things that we have high confidence in, not committing to those things that we need to still experiment, but explaining the journey of experimentation that we're going to go on. Look at what Amazon has done with Project Kuiper, right? Like their low Earth satellite business. They have been managing the communication of like, we are going to invest, we are going to do this, we think this is what it has, but they haven't made big commitments from it. It's largely unaccounted for in any models. Take that as compared to what GE did with Predix, right? Before they had any market traction, before they knew what the platform needed to be, they started making commitments to the street relative to what it was going to deliver. Those are barbell examples of how to do strategic communication right and how to do strategic communication wrong to bring your stakeholders along. And it's a vital part of transformational leadership. It's important in any type of leadership, but even more important when we are going on a explorative journey of building the future, which is unpredictable, can't be timed, can't be quantified, but you know it exists. And our job is to explore our ways to it.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's particularly on the technology community to continue to educate the business community, because I've sat in on startups and modern businesses, and you really can't tell the difference between who the CFO is and who the chief marketing officer, the CEO, and the CIO, because they kind of have a language. You go into a traditional corporate structure, and 5 minutes in, you know who the CFO is, because they have very stovepipe roles and they really don't understand the technology particularly well. The thing that I continue to try to believe in is that this is a two-speed change, two-corridor change. There's stuff we know we have to do to break the complexity of the legacy from big things that are wired together to components that are Lego blocks, as you said.
Yep.
And that's something we have to do, and it's a hard march, and we got to get the money and we got to sell that. But we got to sell that as an enabler of the second speed, which is now I'm ready for you to come in with whatever you got, and I got a portal for you to plug into so I could get your robot from the edge all the way up to the brain and back to do something at the speed of the business. So the two big corridors of change is the innovation and modernization going on at the same time. This we know how to do, and this is the only we're going to be able to do, right? But the more we get there, and it's going to be 2 to 3 to 4 years before you break it down enough, but you got to be able to continue to drive at that and sell that idea by being a good storyteller and explaining that if you're clogged up in the nervous system, you're not going to get from the edge to the brain and back in the kind of time frame that's going to be able to change the price of something dynamically, right, or to ship it dynamically.
Well, I think that concept of modular design is essential, and I believe it needs to tie to not just the technology, but kind of the users of that technology. And I work with a number of organizations on kind of operating model transformation, and it's the hardest type of work because you're decalcifying all types of built up stuff that comes along with an organization. You know that better than I do. But getting them in this mindset of, kind of this concept of black box design. I shouldn't have to understand how underwriting works or all the systems. As a user of it, I should know what the inputs are, and I should know what the outputs are, and I should know what the service level requirements are relative to that. That's really all I should know to be a customer of an underwriting service. That's an example of modular design. And if you can get not just the technology, but the operations around that combined to be these operations, then you're truly setting up for modular design, for better accountability, for teams that are focused and are cared and have so much more fungibility, or the ability to react to new opportunities or anti-fragile scenarios than they can today. And so I think that modular design is an essential aspect. One question I'd have for you is, how do you see AI changing the speed at which we can kind of make this type of transformation? Because I think as practitioners, like, we not only have to apply it for others, but we got to apply it in our own work. Do you see like the better organizations going, oh, what used to be 12 or 18-month transformation, like, no, now we can prove things out in 3 months or much faster than we were able to even 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think the most dramatic changes we've been working on, the modernization of legacy for decades. And it's been relearn, refactor, rehost, take it and break it down. And that used to take 5 to 7 years of steady work. I think it's 2 to 3 years now because of the tools. Using AI to go into old COBOL, old assembler, and separate out business is pretty stunning. So I would be playing offense against the plumbing and the data and everything else, and tell them it's not going to take me a decade. It's going to take me 2 to 3 years, and I should have pretty good progress on certain things in 12 to 18 months, and really pound away at that. So that's one component.
So can I react to that one, which is that is a type of IT only big bet. And the thing that I would add to that is really identifying what are the critical things, what are the high risk, high value risks that we run in accelerating that, and figure out a way to bring them forward and to test them, which allows you to then be more aggressive in pursuing that shorten cycle time. We all know that when you add duration to any journey, to any project, you are adding risk, right? So if we can segment and shorten these refactoring projects, I think you dramatically lower the risk relative to them. And so that is a big bet, and that is, I think, shortening that cycle time of legacy transition is a massive opportunity for kind of forward-looking, optimistic IT leaders.
Yeah, and I think it also, if you look at it, most people are moving they're lifting and shifting the brain tumor is still there with the data
Right.
and the processes. You got to go at the brain, but I think you can go at it in a reduced risk way with the tools that are available on all the AI platforms.
Yep.
That go
which are so dynamic and changing so fast. Like, I think you really have to be a student of the market and of the absolute bleeding edge on that, and figure out how to test it and use it to your advantage. You can't go. I think it's a kind of a B- game plan to go like, well, I'm going to let this new transition technology, this new technique get proven out for 5 years before we adopt it. I think that is the wrong mindset in this. I think you need to be aggressive. You need to test it out, but you need to be aggressive in adopting those bleeding edge technologies to help do this type of transformation.
Yeah, and I think the way we've attacked it in our framework is to move away from projects to capabilities, and that is a mind shift from business users. And what we're asking the business, and have been for decades now, is just tell us what you need the ability to do. Because if you tell us what you need the ability to do, we could reverse engineer that into what capabilities do I need. And that points you in a direction as to where you should start eating the legacy. Right?
Yeah. And you might recognize that orientation, that capability orientation. We define that as outcome definitions in big bet leadership, right? And you kind of skip through all the mess, you skip through what the journey might be to like, tell me what the outcomes are that we need. And again, kind of black box this thing. And if you can agree on that, then you can do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think what you see when you kind of recognize it is that's where the team of teams come in that are cross-functional, because in order to serve a customer in an airline like Delta Airlines, you've got to know where the crew is. You got to know where the baggage is. All these are in different systems, but people, frontline people could explain to you what they need, and customers can, I need to be able to get rebooked if I'm going to miss my flight.
Right.
Hours in advance, not when I land. Right. And that gives you the ability to reverse engineer it. One of the things that I think people are struggling with is, and I haven't read the article, I just saw the headline of what you came out with, was the most dangerous thing you can do in 2025 is do nothing. Right? How do you balance that with doing all kinds of crazy things just because you got to wake up in the morning and somebody, at a cocktail party told you about something last night, right? But I agree with you that sitting around waiting for this to happen is not a good idea, but jumping into anything feels pretty risky.
Yeah. So this week's, I write in this newsletter, Digital Leader newsletter, once a week. And this week was about, that, hey, the worst thing you could do in 2025 was do nothing. And the question you're asking is the essential question. And the right answer is very much company and context specific. But the wrong answer is not having a portfolio point of view that almost consistently reassesses what is the right resource allocation portfolio for us, short-term and incremental versus long-term and exploratory, right? If I in a very simple framing relative to kind of those two tensions. And what we tend to do is always orient towards the short term and incremental, and we stop investing in the long term infrastructure, long term capabilities building, long term exploring new businesses and capability. Those things always suffer, and that's the story. And so I came up with kind of a set of simple, rubrics or steps to take. But the essence of it is you need to think about this as a portfolio. Resource allocation is the most important set of high stakes decisions that senior leaders make. And they make all sorts of mistakes relative to this. One is that they peanut butter across, which means you really don't have the force to win in anything really hard, or they actually don't have a portfolio. And so just kind of the tyranny of today and kind of the best salesperson tends to win and everything. You have to have a small, dedicated steward. It can be an individual or a team that creates this perspective. One of the simple rubrics was what I called the vitality ratio, and it's simply a ratio that has capital expenditures and R&D divided by share buybacks and dividends, right? And so it's not a hard answer, but it's an indicator of like, how much are we investing in tomorrow, which is the numerator, versus how much are we capitalizing on short-term benefits? That's the denominator of that ratio. And I think what it generally shows is that the companies that are playing offense, they tend to have a higher ratio, and the companies that are playing for the short term, quarter to quarter, have a lower ratio in that ratio. So there's a set of kind of questions in this newsletter to ask relative to this, but that's one of the key ways to evaluate, are you playing offense or defense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the kind of the last question that we come up against a lot is built around sequence, right? I mean, sometimes when you're building a city, you're better to build the ring roads and get the electricity in before you start building a house here and a building there, and all of a sudden you turn around. So architecture matters, and I know you believe that because I've read the books, right? Or at least the Amazon ideas. But I think it's not just technical architecture; it's business architecture, right? I mean, how do you get some sequence to this launching things, as opposed to, don't launch the roof yet, we haven't launched the foundation, or maybe, without because the roof may not hold, right? If you don't have some picture of the future, it doesn't have to be a detail, but at least an elevation of the house.
Yeah, well, clearly the circumstances matter to the answer on this, but I am more oriented towards how do you actually deploy something, and maybe with some workarounds and some cheats, and then backfill to get to where you want to go, versus this like, oh, it has to somehow have incredible operational, set of metrics in order to even go live. And so I do in general think about how do we push the boundaries of getting something into production, getting something into market with some short-term sub-optimized costs, headcount, workarounds to it, and then work to improve it. The key is you got to make sure you continue the funding on that improvement work afterwards, and not just launch and then leave all of that in place. So, back to Amazon, when we launched the marketplace business in 2002, we essentially had kind of this Wizard of Oz mindset, which is like we built the facade for hundreds of merchants so that they could kind of automate their work into us. And we had dozens of manual things going on behind the scenes. And then after launch, we slowly caught up on that and everything. The orientation of the day was like, no, we have to have everything automated from the get-go. And my key partner there, Jim Harding, and I, like, we sold it like, no. We are going live this year. We are going to test out the market for this. We are going to prove to sellers that this works. And then we will figure out how to scale this operationally afterwards. And that was definitely the best decision, but it wasn't the obvious decision, right? And it wasn't without great debate and everything. And it was anti mindset at Amazon at the time, but that was the right decision. And so at the end of the day, it highly depends on the situation. But I would, again, tend to be more clever and more crafty and more optimistic about, like, how do we get something in and going? You know as well as I do that launching something new is hard, but what's really hard is turning off the old thing, right? Like deprecating something. Thinking that all the way through, like what the deprecation plan is, and working backwards and being as aggressive as possible on that, bringing the high risk things forward, like that's playing the big bet leadership game right there.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting next few years. So hopefully,
that's the great thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people keep saying to me, why haven't I thought about retiring? And because it's just getting interesting now.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's I've watched the technology move along to where, if you could conceive it now, you can do it. Our big problem 20, 30 years ago is you come up with these great ideas, but you couldn't put a handheld on a route truck, right? In 1960.
And I think while that optimistic mindset sounds, kind of trivial, I actually think it's the most essential leadership mindset, and everything, right? How do we take a position that is optimistic about the future and we build and invest in the future versus kind of, dour and pessimistic and sarcastic about all of this, and all we're trying to do is optimize for today? I think that's the essential offense versus defense mindset that you're talking about, and I think it's actually a huge mindset that good leaders need to have on this path.
Yeah, I do too, and it's a very exciting time, and I'll continue to read the articles that you send out because I don't know who does your titles, but they're grabbers.
Me and my research assistant, we do the titles and everything, but I have a specific mindset about trying to create a curiosity gap on my work and especially on titles and everything. Like you got to make your work interesting, and that for everything. Like you got to find a way to tell the story and make it interesting. That's part of your job.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that our community has the a way to get on the mailing list for
Perfect.
Because it just kind of, you go through the week, and then you get something like this, and then you say, God, that just hit me in the head here, right? That is, just the title of it, and then you go read it. It's simple to read. I'm trying to figure out ways to communicate with people in the time slices that people have, right? And people don't have a lot of time to read everything, but if something could stimulate them, that's what we're hoping to do. So we really appreciate you taking the time today to spend with us, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going.
I look forward to it, and I'm easy to get a hold of. John Rossman on LinkedIn, Big Bet Leadership. I like tackling hard problems, and so however I can help you and your audience out, I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's great. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks to John Rossman for a thoughtful conversation. This next era isn't about waiting for certainty. It's about building the muscle to explore, learn, and adapt while still delivering today. Leadership now takes clarity, momentum, and the courage to make informed bets on the future. We'll link to John's work in the show notes. Thanks for walking with us. We'll see you next time.